today, parent of slain teen from C.H.OP zone, or the former Chaz, receives a call, and more attacks on your civil liberties. Much more coming right up. Welcome to Black Spring on your July 3rd, 2020. Hope everybody's doing well. And as per usual, we're not short on summer dissenting. So we have confrontations and hostility in the public streets. We have a follow-up on a legislation of policing with an interview between Rep. Clyburn of South Carolina, as well as Senator Tim Scott. And the parent of teen slain in C.H.OP receives a call. And we also have a response from my personal challenge to Senator Feinsten. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. If you're just now joining me, I'd like to thank you so much. And know that you are the difference on this channel. If you're just now coming in, if you could kindly hit the like button. And I know this is an unscheduled stream, but I am still adding, I'm still choosing the days that I will add, and no less, there's tons of dissenting going on. And also it is a holiday weekend, so it's hope to hear more about maybe what you guys are planning for the weekend, and also that we'll get a little bit more into that as we come to a different segment or a different installment of this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. But shout out to everyone in the stream. And as per usual, shout out to Garrett Reed. Thank you so much for coming in and for the housekeeping, if you will. If you don't mind hitting the like or unlike button for channelytics purposes, it's always very helpful. If you could hit the channelytics button, hit the like or the unlike button, or if you could hit the share button, if you dare to throw caution to the wind as we are rolling into July 4th, Independence Day 2020. Also, shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Says, don't forget, please hit the like. Thank you so much for that. Chrysler Imperial H, the gold standard in moderation. Thank you so much. Chrysler Imperial H. I hope you are doing well in your area. And hopefully, I'm beginning to be under the impression that there is a silent majority in this country. And I do think that people are going to celebrate Independence Day. Now, it's your choice. That's one thing about this country. You still have choices. You still have some choices, even though some choices are not quite what we're used to. We still have some choices. So I hope that you guys are able to find peace or find some common ground on this holiday weekend. But first, I must take an opportunity to shout out the loyal patrons and subscribers. Thank you guys so much for all that you do in these technocratic times. And I appreciate you guys for all that you do. So I would love to shout you guys out, of course, as always. So as always, if you are looking for, sorry about that, guys. Little technical challenge there, but if you are looking for live streams, networking opportunities, you're looking for content, there's a variety here. And also we'll be adding a couple of additional shout outs as well this morning or this afternoon, whatever your perspective is. Shout out to Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, the Angel Munez Variety Show, The Definition of Anarchy, Sandy K, Chrysler Imperial H, as well as Little Miss Goth, and a shout out to Cold War Jesus. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So we're not short on dissenting, and we will get right into the dissent. See, Chrysler Imperial, shout out to you. Chrysler says, are breaking somebody's rules when you do a channel saying hit the like button before you start talking in the chat. I didn't realize there was a rule. Well, I'm just it's helpful if everyone could do it, just so you don't forget. I mean, because sometimes it's kind of like entering a conversation, and it's very much entering a conversation or a discourse, and you get engaged, and then before you know it, you will hit the button or you will not hit the button. You might forget. So I'm going to go ahead and rev up. A lot going on as per usual. So we'll first start with not sure if you guys are familiar, but okay, of course there was loss of life in this C.H.OP region, if you will. And and finally, there's been some attention, or there's been some follow-up on the story. In fact, Sean Hannity actually held an interview with the father earlier this week, and he actually spoke out about his feelings, his concerns, and just his overall unsatisfaction and about the neglect that the mayor, the leadership of the city, and the fact that he wasn't offered any form of condolences. He's looking for answers. I would imagine he's looking for many things. I am not a parent myself, but I would imagine that there are certain, not just on a protocol, but I would imagine that just as a citizen, that he would be offered some explanation, or that they are, or even be offered, given some reassurance that your son did not die in vain, or that we are doing everything that we can to bring the individuals responsible to justice. But you're not quite getting that. He didn't quite get that, and it was a very difficult interview to watch. So shout out to everybody that's in the stream. I will potentially play some of that interview, and I'll play some of the interview, but I do have a response. That he did actually end up getting a call. So it was good for him, but I think it's very sad that where we are right now. It's very sad where we are as a nation, and the amount of the amount of attacks on civil liberties. That's something else that I'd like to get into today. And these governors and these mayors find it acceptable to just not lead, or that placation is what they should be, is better to be placating, to have a position of placation, or just to be silent, than to actually to govern or to lead. I don't even see any management. I don't see, there's a lot to be desired, much to be desired in many of these cities. And there's, of course, and then of course it emboldens people. It emboldens the people that don't really want to comply. They don't think they have to comply. That they think they can just roam and run the streets and do whatever they want, even if it causes somebody else harm. It's just not their concern. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play you just a little bit from the Sean Hannity, and then I will give you the response as well. as I did not cover this story on yesterday, but it's no less valuable. But we will go into it just a little bit. Hope everybody's doing well, and I'd like to thank you so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Let me check and see who else is in the stream. Shout out to Garrett Reed and Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you guys so much for coming in. And so I'm going to bring you that clip. So this is, we'll just do just a little bit of this clip here. Once again, thank you so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.
Just say.
I'm still numb today. I got to bury my son tomorrow, and it's just been a lot going on. And my whole thing and my whole life is, man, this is incredible. And I'm like, I still this day, it's been almost 2 weeks. I haven't heard from nobody. Has nobody called? They still ain't nobody called me or try to find me. And his ID is my ID. So his number is my number. So it's easy to come for the detective say, hey, excuse me, knock on my door. Excuse me. Let me tell you what happened about your son, I don't know nothing. I had to find my son. They wouldn't even let me see my son that night. It took me a whole week before I can see my son.
And then let me just say that
Mr. Anderson,
he's in trauma right now.
Mr. Anderson,
yes.
You weren't allowed to see your son for a week? Please,
they wouldn't let me. I went to the hospital and they said that we couldn't see him. They just said we couldn't see him. There was now when I go there, I'm going there, I'm looking for a detective, somebody tell me something. But when I get there, there's nobody. I mean, the hospital is blank. It's silence. I'm going like, what's going on? So I go ask the lady and she tells me, hold on. So I wait. I couldn't go in, so I'm waiting for a long time. And she tells me to come in, and then the doctor tells me only thing he tells me is my son's deceased. I'm like, well, can I see him? Is it my son? Because you got to realize, at this time I'm going like, is it really my son? I want to know, is it my son?
Mm-hmm.
Because this could be somebody else's child. But I'm in my head, I'm going like, yeah, it's mine because everybody's saying this, but in my heart, I'm going like, I need to see him I need to see him one time. Just to make so I can see him. I couldn't see him that day. That was Saturday. It took all the way till Thursday. I just seen him just last week, just Thursday. And they had to, whatever they did to him and make him so they presentable, whatever it was. But I needed, I got to finally see him. And then in my heart, I knew it was my son now. This is my son because, I wouldn't want nobody else's son. And this is incredible. These kids and the kids that passed, what happened the other day, all this on this child. Man, this is incredible. These are kids, man. I'm 50 years old. Man, these are kids, man. They should have been stopped this a long time ago. It's starting to get, excuse me, but it's getting to a point, where, it's getting.
I'm so sorry.
Just really.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Anderson. I can only say this as a dad. You want to break Sean Hannity? I'm a pretty tough guy. That will break me. What you've been through.
Somebody that asked for this. And they need to come talk to me, and somebody need to come tell me something because I still don't know nothing. And somebody need to come to my house and knock on my door and tell me something that, I don't know nothing. All I know is my son he got killed up there, and he's just a 19-year-old. No, that's Horace Lorenzo Anderson. That's my son, and I loved him, and that was my son.
Got your family. Don't worry about
everybody. I can tell you, sir, and Andre, I didn't want to cut you off earlier, but on this show, we've done something. We have every weekend hundreds of kids shot, people shot in Chicago, killed every weekend. We get a death toll. Nobody knows their names. These are American kids, grandmothers, grandfathers, moms, and dads. We're the United States of America. We can fix this. We don't fix this. And you do it by right policing, training police, non-lethal weapons. You do it with a police presence, not demonizing. Everyone agreed what happened to George Floyd can't ever happen again. Nobody, it was not a political issue.
Right.
How do we
Right.
function as a society if we don't protect our children?
And I feel for his family too. No disrespect.
Of course you do.
When it comes to my son, I feel like
it's personal.
Just like you saying that, somebody should have helped my son. He needed help. He needed paramedics. He needed the police to come in. Somebody, man, somebody was supposed to go in there and help my son. You know,
can I tell you something, sir?
Just anybody helping him. They should have came in there and helped my son. And even after that, still, I need to, man, let me know. I shouldn't know from some little kids. I should have somebody, I'm 50 years old. Somebody should have knocked on my door and said, man, we need to sit down and talk to you and let you know what's going on. Because I still don't know what's going on. I'm hearing from YouTube and I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing. All I know is my son's dead and I don't know nothing. And I'm still trying to figure out answers so I can sleep. I don't sleep. You know, my kids don't sleep. I can't even stay at home. My kids don't even, they feel like they're unsafe at home now. So I've been buying motel rooms and I don't have that type of money for this. I'm not, I wasn't prepared for this. You know what I'm saying? So I just, I'm blessed that my son,
Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Now here, this is a very emotional time, and I can say this much, that at least Sean Hannity and Fox News gave this grieving man, this grieving American man, and gave him the platform to come forth and say, look, this is what's going on in an American major city. And another point that he made, I'm going to paraphrase, he said, this was just some kid. This was my son. This was my son. He's not just some statistic for you to throw in for you to put in an assortment of fatalities. This was my son. There is a derelict government, derelict police safety issue here. And everybody that called for the defunding of the police, I mean, where are these people? And I'm not to say that this is not to suggest that the police could have stopped this from happening, but the fact that the police has been neutered by the mayor and by that derelict leadership, they weren't anywhere around. I mean, what does lodging pepper spray into a crowd do to someone armed with a gun? What did that do? What would that do? There's been reportedly no force allowed in this area previously, because the area has been shut down, conveniently when I guess when it got to the mayor's doorstep. So, I imagine, I mean, what else? What are the city officials doing about policing? Did they take the taxpayers' money and decide they were going to hire? Are they hiring private security there now? This is the kind of con, and more lives will be lost. And I noticed that this family, with all due respect, they didn't want to assign any political. They didn't want to. They made those statements throughout this particular interview that they were not of political. They weren't there to speak on, to take sides or to take to do what's politically expedient. He's speaking from, I am a parent, and I have suffered a loss. And in fact, I would imagine that even a civil suit may even come out of this. I would imagine. I would imagine that the mayor, I think that they're culpable and they're derelict in what they've done to manage that city, to manage that community. And they put a lot of people's lives at risk under the summer of love, under the auspices of the summer of love, as it was referred to. So I would imagine, they're already seeing a bit of a mass exodus when it comes economically. I would imagine that Seattle is going to suffer. They're going to suffer in their districts. And not only that, maybe some families are thinking, well, this is not where we need to be. What if it's our block the next time? What are we going to do when it comes to our block? Because I think they've set a precedence here. If they could establish C.H.OP in a central location, then why not? They could set it up anywhere. What's to stop them from setting it up anywhere? I mean, what's to stop BLM from setting up anywhere, or anyone else? I know we haven't heard from Antifa in a while. It's almost like, are they trading off? Are they trading off? 1 week you got Antifa, the next week you got casualties from BLM inspired, BLM agitators, BLM demonstrators. And then, of course, in a previous stream, that we had the police chief saying, oh, well, they said unequivocally that they had nothing to do, with this. And these are Black lives. Black lives were lost in C.H.OP. It just, it's, the narrative is, they're losing steam. They're losing steam. They're losing steam in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people are waking up to the con. I think they are. And I think they're going to start getting more pushback. So shout out to Crazy Chick Sheena. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate you. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Here again, I'm offering another disclaimer. I did not post this one until the 11th hour, but here again, the 2 days, the Monday and Tuesdays, will remain the same. But I did say that I could add more, and I will be adding more, including a couple of night streams as well. So thank you guys so much. And Crazy Chick Sheena says, where's BLM now? The wholesale Democrats leadership news needs to be investigated. Well, I think there's a lot of conflict of interest going on. There's a lot of entanglements. And I think that when these city officials are too woke or too conflicted, then they need to be impeached, or they need to be recalled. You can't have summer of love at the cost of lives. Shout out to you, Touchdown Sean. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming in. As I tell you, BLM should be at home. Well, I think more than that needs to happen at this point. It's not. In fact, I saw some activity in my area yesterday, and I'm just thinking, okay, here we go. And they had posters. They basically had handmade posters, but I'm just thinking, this is a quiet community. No one is inviting, you have the right to do your protest, but what exactly are you protesting? What is your agenda? But I don't think they were there. They weren't there very long, because by the time I came around again, they were gone. And many of them, they're kids. And many of them happen to be white. I think maybe there was one Black kid. But I'm just thinking, it's time for people to start finding out. It's time for people to stop blindly following and willfully following people around. Because there used to be a saying, what you don't know, if you don't know, it can't hurt you. I think that's a lie. I think that's clearly a lie. What you don't know can hurt you, and it will hurt you. And that's what's hurting a lot of people. Shout out to the Kiss of Hamrabi. And he says we need to elect politicians and district attorneys to work to protect the rights of citizens and police to defend themselves against BLM and Antifa. Well, we'll see. Like I said, this weekend is going to be fully loaded. I'll say Crazy Chick Sheena says, yes, I stay in a very upscale community in Cambridge. I can't do the liberal Democrat cities. Well, they're definitely turning out to be the populist opinion cities. And if you're not down with it, you know, your neighborhood could be the next CHOP zone. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, like I said, we're going into uncharted territory. So I think a lot of things can happen. So with that said, I'm going to keep going here. And also, I'd just like to bring you to, we're starting to see a bit more confrontation in the streets. Confrontation and hostility in the public streets. Now, the situation I'm about to show you could have been a lot worse, and will be a lot worse if people don't. The thing about it is, I want to say this on it, and this is me submitting my own. This is me asserting my own opinion. You have to love yourself, and you have to be confident in yourself. I say this. I say this. I'm not responsible for anybody else's insecurities, whether that's black, white, Hispanic, Japanese, Asian, whatever it is. I cannot be responsible for your individual insecurities, because you know what? At some point, I've had my own insecurities, and those were my responsibilities for me to work on myself. But don't go out here knocking on other people's doors and being, you know, if you're standing your ground in whatever the situation is, do it, and don't leave anything on the table with your assertion. But don't charge anybody just because you have a chip on your shoulder. They don't know you individually. So with all that said, shout out to everybody in the stream. Thanks so much for coming in. And if you could hit that like button, unlike button, or share the stream out, I really appreciate everybody for coming in, and shout out to you. So I'm going to go ahead and share this next clip with you guys. Once again, hope everybody's doing well. So I would say you're going to see exactly what this is, where I'm going with this. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.
Do something, please. Do something. Do something, please.
I will say this is a disclaimer on profanity, obscenities. This is the time that we are in. If you were offended, if you don't want to lend me your ear on this, that's fine. But this is the footage here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Do you think you guys are? Who do you think you are? You called her name? She did nothing to you. I didn't. I didn't. No, you didn't. You're very racist and ignorant. You're racist because you're calling. No, you bumped it. She bumped into it. You cannot just walk around calling white people racist. This is not that type of world. White people are racist. No one's racist. Why would you bump her? I care about you. I care about you, and I'm sorry if you had. Why did you say sorry? If you bumped into her, why did you say sorry? No one is racist. If you didn't, I'm sorry if you had something like that. Ignorant. Very. Mom, watch. Get the fuck away from me! Get on her face! You better get on my face! Get away!
Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So in that particular clip, I think the context of it, you could see, I don't know where, was there some type of physical interaction? Or did somebody brush against somebody? I mean, honestly, this is the kind of bullying and type of, it's just being hair trigger. And I mean that. If you're hair trigger, if you've got a chip on your shoulder, if you're about to fall apart, if you're that triggered by white people, if I don't know what happened. I don't know if somebody brushed against somebody's shoulder and they didn't say, excuse me, a simple, I'm sorry, walk away. That's happened before July 3rd, right? Occasionally you brush someone. Occasionally you bump into somebody's car. But when you start taunting and agitating people, and there's nothing original about this kind of a thing. My thing is, if they're backing up, why would you walk behind? That's the other thing. That's just generally, I notice people walk behind cars in parking lots when they see the people, you see the lights illuminated on the back and they're backing up. You just had a confrontation with these people. And I heard a thud. I can't really make out whether she bumped up to the car, or did she jump? Did she hit the car or make it known that she was walking away and made some type of physical? I did hear a thud. Now, I believe it had been the kind of thud that was dangerous, then she would have been pinned, or some other type of reaction would have been going on. So all of a sudden, you're trying to hit me. From the way I can see it. She jumped. The lady with the gun said, don't jump behind my car. Don't jump on my car. I heard contact. I heard a thud on the car after they were inside of the car. I'm not a police officer, and I cannot predict everything that happened here. But I do know that if you taunt people, if you try to gang up on people, then they are going to come out. They're going to come out swinging. People are paying attention to what's going on. But see, you notice how they're saying, call the police. I don't know where they stand on police, but she said, call the police when she's got a gun drawn on her. I'm saying these kinds of things are only going to get worse. If you're itching for something, hang on just 1 second, guys. All right. Apologize for the delays there. But yes, I can't really understand exactly where the situation fell apart in that situation, but I just think that you can't if you're going to be confrontational, at some point you have to walk away. And you can't make contact with people's vehicles. You can't throw things at their vehicles. You can't do any of that. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Shout out to Crazy Chick Sheena. Sorry about the delay there, guys. So let's see. Okay, so we'll keep going here, but that's just one example of a story that I wanted to share with you. Okay, so with that said, we'll go on also to the next segment, in which we will have a follow-up on the legislation, on the policing legislation submitted by the GOP, and that was under Senator Tim Scott that presented that earlier. And you'll also hear from Representative Clyburn. I think Clyburn and Scott represent South Carolina. Of course, Clyburn is a Democrat, and he has thrown quite a bit of staunch support behind none other than Joe Biden. So, and then you have Senator Tim Scott, who is the Republican senator. So I'm going to bring you some of that coverage. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's see. What do we have here? Okay, so I'm going to bring you the coverage here. And here you're going to have a little bit of, you'll have some audio or an actual interview between Senator Tim Scott and I believe it's Martha from Fox News that's conducting this particular interview. Okay, so we'll start here. Thanks so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.
His own merits, not whether or not he married someone. I think Ulysses Grant ought to be judged on his own merits, not whether or not he married someone whose parents owned slaves. And that's what happened to him. Yeah. So I just think that everybody ought to come to grips with what the real history is.
Great point. One of the things that has been a big concern is trying to actually see some change and some police reform across this country. Tim Scott, who I'm going to speak to in a moment, worked very hard to get somewhere in the Senate on a police reform bill that he has spent a very long time on, years on, in fact. Here he is expressing his frustration on the Senate floor. Listen to this.
The actual problem is not what is being offered, it is who is offering it. But what I missed in this issue is that the stereotyping of Republicans is just as toxic and poison to the outcomes of the most vulnerable communities in this nation. Is instead of getting 70% of what you wanted or more, you're going to get zero. How's that for a return? How's that for loyalty? How does that work for the little kid at a home in North Charleston where Walter Scott got shot?
What would you say to Senator Scott? He's obviously so frustrated that everything seems to come down to politics.
Well, his frustration ought to be with Ms. McConnell. I think that Ms. McConnell handcuffed him. I know Tim. I know his background, his experiences. We both shared Charleston. I wasn't born in Charleston, but I keep a home there. I taught school there. I love Charleston. I love the community. And I know the community that he came from. I think if Mitch McConnell had allowed him to sit down with Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and work out their differences. Remember, Cory and Kamala introduced the same legislation that we've got on the House side, and he introduced his legislation. I think that the three of them should have sat around the table somewhere.
I think he tried to. Yeah, I think he tried to, and I don't know that it was Mitch McConnell's fault. He says that 70% of what he wanted, the Senate Democrats agreed to. So now the future for the potential of a federal bill that gets signed into legislation is pretty much dead in the water, isn't it?
I have no idea. That's the Senate business. We passed it in the House. And the fact of the matter is, that bill is sitting there in the Senate, and I think they ought to really sit down and try to work out their differences. If you are telling me that I or members of the House have to swallow chokeholds in order to get a piece of legislation, I don't think so. I don't know of anybody in this country who feels that chokeholds ought to be encouraged, not to use, or outlawed. They need to be outlawed, just that simple. If you're telling me that I got to swallow bad policemen who are insulated because of qualified immunity in order to get a bill, I don't think so. Walter Scott, it's been in 20 years. Walter Scott's a murderer. It's been in 20 years in prison. He was a police officer. So I believe that qualified immunity ought to be something visited, and we ought not have to swallow bad policing. So there are a lot of things in that bill that I think they ought to be able to work out if they were to sit around the table.
They weren't even able to get it to the floor. It was just a procedural vote that went down, and he offered a possibility of 20 amendments that could be part of the negotiation process. So obviously, as you saw, he was very frustrated. I'm going to give him a chance in a moment to respond to what you have to say as well, sir. Representative James Clyburn, thank you very much. Very good to have you here today, sir. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
My thanks, Sam. I just want to correct myself. I meant to say anti-slavery or abolitionist statues that were the questionable ones that were brought down. Joining me now is Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, who joins me now. Senator, thank you for being here. So you heard Representative Clyburn. He said that Mitch McConnell prevented you from sitting down with Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, and that it's all his fault.
Well, no, I had multiple conversations with Democrats, including those two, about what they saw that needed to be changed.
I mean, is it really hard to tell the trajectory here? It's like you're going to go, okay, now let's blame Mitch McConnell. He's holding us back. He should have sat down with Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, but no resolution, no advancement is better than whatever they were offering. It's nonstop. Nonstop games, and they're not. I just think they're beyond incompetent. They're playing games, and people's lives are being affected by what they're not doing. They're not doing anything. If they want to get involved, this is what they do. They volley back and forth. He's making the case for Clyburn. There is totally Southern and emotionally segregated himself. So he's projecting his own racism many times on other people. But then he goes and blames Mitch McConnell. Okay, let's blame the white guy. Mitch McConnell's the big bad wolf. Mitch McConnell is the Grim Reaper. Mitch McConnell is the reason you have the bill, over 200 bills in the graveyard. He's shutting us down. It's just right on, Cold War Jesus. They set up the straw man. Well, you didn't do this. Well, you didn't do this against. We wanted this to be banned for cops, and it was just. Yeah, this is who's representing and who's been elected in these times. So without further ado, I'll finish here with Tim Scott.
In the bill, and I offered them, as you just suggested, 20 amendments to do the changing. They still walked away from the opportunity. And chokeholds, here's the interesting part. Chokeholds should be banned on the federal level. We did so. The House did so. On the local level, the House bill does not ban chokeholds, nor does mine, because we should never, as a federal government, tell the local department how to do their jobs, what tactics they can and cannot use. We can encourage behavior based on the incentive of grants, but neither bill actually bans chokeholds on the local level. But I would certainly add to my legislation the carotid, which is the blood flow that was missing on the chokehold part of the legislation. Yeah. But if that is our disagreement, that's solved in 30 seconds. Yeah. It's just
I think people just shake their heads. They just can't believe after all of this, right? After George Floyd, after the outpouring of grief over what happened to him, after all the stories and all the videos, your bill didn't even get to the floor for discussion on the Senate side when there is, as you say, 70% of it are things that you line up on, and some of the other areas of disagreement could have been worked out through these 20 amendments that 100%. You offered. You know, I mean, the American people see what that is. You know, I mean, it's pretty clear that there are individuals who don't want anything to get done and could have election purposes tied to it.
Presidential. It absolutely is presidential politics tied to the issue 100% of the time. There's no doubt when you're at 70%. With the ability to move forward, Martha, the only reason why you don't do it is because you think in November you have a better chance than July. Right. That means for the next 5 months, the communities that we're talking about will go without a legislative victory, not because of Republicans, not because of President Trump, because of the Democrat Party that refuses to negotiate from a position of 70%.
So nothing changes. And I think people see that pretty clearly from the most deliberative body in the United States Congress. We get no deliberation, no discussion, end of story before it even gets to the floor for them to begin that great deliberative process that they're supposed to be so good at. You brought tapes in to play of voice messages that were left on your machine in your office after you gave that speech. Tell me about that.
Well, we had more than a dozen of them. I only played 2 of them, which were the most racially offensive comments.
Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So there again, you have more filibuster, straw man arguments from Cold War Jesus. I would say that's exactly the way it fits. But then Mitch McConnell is their all occasion. Mitch McConnell is the all occasion straw man for these people. And I just don't think that, you know, they're not effective, they're not efficient, and they are not responding to the tensions that are in the streets. They're not. And unfortunately, I don't think we've seen the last of this. We have not seen the last of, we've not seen the last of interactions with people in the streets. We haven't seen the last of interactions with cops and people in the streets, because I mean, it's just not, it's nowhere near done. They're making everything, there's going to be a lot of loss of life because it's politically expedient not to do anything or to keep the race narrative going. It's not impressive at all. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. If you guys are just now coming in, I'd like to thank you for coming into this segment. Also, I want to take an opportunity to shout out the actual patrons. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. And a special shout out to Cold War Jesus. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you guys, each and every one of you, for coming in. You make a huge difference. And if you guys are looking for live streams, networking opportunities, content, if you'll check out Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, the Angel Munez Variety Show, The Definition of Anarchy, Sandy K, Chrysler Imperial H, and Little Miss Goth. And once again, a special patron. Cold War Jesus, thank you guys so much for all that you do. Really appreciate you. And we will continue. So the next story that I have for you, I'm going to be bringing you a bit of a personal interaction that I had, a little bit of personal correspondence that I have with one of our servants. What's that? What's that? No video. There's video. There's video. I'm here. I just let's see. I'll bring you guys back in here. Let's see. Oh, crazy chick Sheena, thank you so much for all that you do. So here I am right now. I'm here. Sorry, I got a little bit distracted just for a second with something I needed to deal with. And I really appreciate you guys for coming in on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And so I'm going to keep going here. Hope everybody's doing well. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to Crazy Chick Sheena. Shout out to Gary L. Youngkeese Jr. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. Touchdown Sean said, my goodness, a total wreck in this country dealing with the Democrats. Cold War Jesus says they prefer power over people. Let's see. You know, I will say this. Shout out to Kisef Amrabi. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you so much for all that you do. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. If I'm being repetitive, please forgive me on this segment. Shout out to Garrett Reed and Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you guys so much. Shout out to Patrick James Forums. Nice to see you. Shout out to Killer Whale Channels as well as Theology Forums. Thank you so much, guys. If you're just now coming in, I really appreciate you. If you could hit that like or unlike bell just for the channelytics. And know that you are valued on this channel each and every time. And I look forward to seeing you guys around on more programs. Also, if you will take a look at the poll that is on, if you will take a look at the actual poll that is on your community tab, you will find that there's a poll there that is engaging you on some civic questions. And because there's an opportunity that some opportunities I'm going to be bringing to the show. And we're not just about sharing and dissenting on Black Spring with Autumn, but we're also about engagement and solutions. And maybe even if we're lucky, we can be more influential in our own communities, in our individual communities. So shout out to you. Thank you so much, Crazy Chick Sheena. I really appreciate you. So I appreciate you guys. So also I will place the Patreon link into the stream. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do. I appreciate everyone. And this is a holiday weekend, of course, at your discretion. I'm not sure. I think I will do a modest celebration. There we go. A modest celebration, but I will always celebrate July 4th, no matter what the rhetoric is behind monuments, flags. I will always respect the flag. Those are my values. And if you choose not to, then you know that's your choice. But I think to have it helps to have historical perspective and historical context and not propaganda or propaganda ministries to detract you from doing that. So I think that it's going to prevail. We're going to have more. There's a silent majority that I think is actually speaking quite loud and clear about what type of, where they want to be, where they want to see the nation go, whether they want to see it crumble. But of course, I did share, I did a video on the Democrats issuing a statement about what's happening at Mount Rushmore tomorrow. I think it's actually kicking off today. And that was the Governor Kristi Noem, who is basically hosting the celebration at Mount Rushmore. And so that's definitely going to be something to watch. I think it's also because of the amount of terror and the amount of mutiny, many mutants and many and agitators everywhere. I think it's also with any, unfortunately, with the world that we live in, you need to be vigilant. Be vigilant during these times. Shout out to you, Touchdown Sean. He says, I just saw where a dean was fired for only saying Black Lives Matter, but everyone's life matters in an email. Breaking news. Well, it's like they want you to, what can I say? Bow down, or, and I don't know. It's just, it's creating an environment, a climate this is not sustainable. I mean, this country has too many roots. So they can come up with all the fluffy and glittery, replace this and renovations this. It's the thought that I think that's more important. Don't let them reform your thinking. Don't let them do that. It's real. Propaganda, Marxist, Leninism, cultural Marxism, liberation theories, all of these ideologies are very real, and they're very powerful. And they've demoralized this country, and we've also been infiltrated on every level. As you can see, that interview, you have Democrat establishment with Clyburn, and then you got Tim Scott, who I think Senator Tim Scott might be on the rise. I think his star might be on the rise, but I think they're going to have to be more bold. They're going to have to be, if we're going to continue to have this two-party system, we have to have more. We need more strength. We need more bold action, because we are at a precipice in this country. Many people that have immigrated to this country, they are waking up, and this place is less familiar to them. It's starting to look like where they fled from. I've seen that. I've seen that from every background. People that have immigrated here from China, people that have immigrated here from South America. They're starting not to recognize this place. People from Cuba. Shout out to you, Eiko Catalina. Shout out to you. Thank you so much for coming in. If you could do us a favor and hit that like button or unlike button for the Channelytics. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate you. Eiko Catalina is in the stream. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I don't mind you guys getting to know each other or getting acquainted. It's great to do networking, but I just ask that you do it in a covert way, as in this is not a grow stream channel. So I will continue. So the next story that I'm going to bring to you will be, you might find it, it's going to come from the wokeisms. Okay. It's going to come from the wokeism. They're coming up with more ways. And that brings me to my next story, but let's go with this one first. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Shout out to Gary L. Youngkeast, who says people are talking about Tim Scott being a president. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why it froze up. People are talking about Tim Scott being president. It has been talk. That is all so far. Well, it's gonna have to be somebody. It's gonna need to be somebody that can withstand that's not worried about cancellation or what's tribally expedient, what's politically expedient. We have a lot. We've conceded too much, and we've got to be careful. We've got to be careful with people saying what we want to hear. I think that's another faction that's kind of gotten us to where we are. We have people that say what we want to hear, people that fly under a profile that says they're conservative or they have conservative values, but then when they get in there, they turn into Mike Braun. We have a new element, or we have a neocon element, or we call them rhinos, however you want to shade them, but they still fall. It's the same thing. So with that said, I'm going to take you to this next story. Once again, shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So I'm going to bring you just a little bit of how the corporate, just what we're seeing in the corporate, we're seeing this, the capitalists are under siege if they're not being woke enough. Okay, so this is from yesterday. This is written by Raven Clabo. This is Walmart will no longer sell, quote, all lives matter products. Company announces, okay, according to this, Walmart has announced it will no longer sell products that feature the phrase, quote, all lives matter, because the retail giant claims it minimizes the focus, quote, the focus on the painful reality of racial inequity, end quote. In its announcement to indefinitely discontinue sales of third-party merchandise, which that particular language, Walmart claimed it, quote, fundamentally, end quote, agreed with the sentiment, but wanted to be respectful of sensitivities of the current climate. Quote, we came to understand that some, but not all people are using the same phrase, quote, all lives matter, in the current environment intentionally minimized the focus on the painful reality of racial inequity, end quote, the statement continued. All right, and here's our favorite mainstream media, which CNN is, what is CNN? Like Star Magazine or the National Enquirer? That's the kind of credibility that they have. It's a gossip column. Quote, CNN reports Walmart has been accused recently of undermining the Black Lives Matter movement by selling merchandise with phrases such as, quote, Irish lives matter, end quote, and, quote, blue lives matter, end quote, on Walmart.com and its Canada online store. So can you see the monolith? The monolith has to be all black, has to be Black Lives Matter. Okay, you got to be, the capitalists have to be under one flag. Capitalism has to be under one flag. Quote, the backlash erupted on social media, end quote, CNN reported, where users criticized the world's largest retailer for allegedly, quote, mocking the Black Lives Matter movement, end quote. Walmart responded by pointing out that many of its online merchandise comes from third-party sellers, all of whom are required to meet a number of criteria in order to sell on Walmart.com, such as criteria that includes ensuring the products are not illegal and that they generally comply with acceptable industry standards. Still, the retailer found itself in a defensive position following the social media backlash. Okay, we have a statement to CBC. Walmart Canada said it, quote, stands against any form of racism or discrimination, end quote. We promote listening, seeking to understand, and embracing individual differences. Today, our third party marketplace has a number of items with variations on the phrase lives matter. We will continue to review those items to ensure compliance with our terms and conditions, end quote. So here again, it's affirmations. We got to have affirmations all over the place that say Black Lives Matter. Shout out to the rapper 10,000. Thank you so much for coming in on this segment. I really appreciate you so much. Thanks so much for coming in, and we'll continue with this. I mean, is it not true that all lives matter? I mean, it's like if you don't do your affirmation on Black Lives Matter, then you're going to be under attack or under scrutiny. So I'll just continue here. Thanks so much. Shout out to Touchdown Sean, his followers on the channel, amazing, first class and super intelligent people. I think it's certainly a very thoughtful. We have a thoughtful group of channel members and subscribers here, and I'm very thankful and grateful for them all. And we all have very unique experiences, and I appreciate the dissent, and I appreciate the differences that we share. But this is also a channel in which, you know, if this is, as a free nation, the free speech, you are free to say what you want to say within YouTube's community standards. I don't bar anyone from saying what they want to say. I just ask that we are respectful of each other, and that we are not attacking each other. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you so much for all that you do. So I'll keep going. I'll finish this one up. So back to Walmart and their placation and folding up. So affirmations, we gotta have affirmations worldwide, right? Affirmations come into if they have their way, the HR 5 will be the affirmation that men will be able to go into restrooms. So you guys should keep an eye on HR 5. Find out where your people stand. When I say your people, find out where your senator stands. Find out where your representative stands on that. If you don't like it, push back. Push back. Tell them it's unacceptable. Tell them you're not happy with the job that they're doing. I think that's a pretty plausibly general consensus that we are not happy with the way these people are handling this government. We are not happy with the fleecing. We are not happy with the silence. We are not happy with what they've done or what they're doing. So I'm going to continue here. In its latest announcement, the retailer, this is Walmart for those of you that are just coming in, say they will continue to sell variations of the phrase, such as Blue Lives Matter. But it will halt the sale of items that declare, quote, all lives matter, and end quote. See, that's problematic. It's problematic. I think, great, Blue Lives Matter, but all lives matter. Why do you need to say that? We can't affirm that all lives matter. Let's see here again. Are you? To me, it's beginning to be a race issue. They make, you can't concede. Everybody has to concede so that Black Lives Matters can be on the spotlight, so they can have their affirmations. That organization is a sham. Okay, I'm going to continue here. According to NJ.com, critics of the phrase, quote, all lives matter, end quote, claim it, quote, dismisses white privilege, end quote, and, quote, devalue Black lives, end quote. Okay, so let's talk this privilege stuff. Do you guys know we have a faction of people that says that there's gender privilege? I, as a woman, have gender privilege. And these liberal progressives, they are deconstructing everything. So I don't want to hear about white privilege. If somebody's taller than you, does that mean that's height privilege? If somebody's shorter than me, is that a height privilege? I mean, you could, let's just do it. Let's just play it out. If you're a shorter person and you have a better center of gravity and you're competing in sports, could you be charged with height privilege? Because you might be better at traction. You're built low to the ground, right? So that's height privilege, right? So you should be persecuted because you were made shorter and you get better traction on the ground. We can find privilege everywhere. If that's what the word privilege means, then you can find that anywhere, right? But then this is where this kind of spiritual kind of delineation comes in. How are you responsible for your gender? Or how are you responsible for how tall you are? How are you responsible for you being Black? How are you responsible for being white? How is privilege assigned and defined? And why do you have to punish anybody? Why do you have to disparage anybody? This is this liberal madness that's what's gone on at these colleges, the Mark Lamont Hills, The culture industry professors have ruined generations. They've totally reformed the way these kids think with their Marxism. I'm going to finish this one up. But so I'm just saying, this is a language of these people. When you're dealing with somebody that's yelling this kind of privilege and that kind of privilege, how can you win with that kind of logic? I know a lot of people that were born into families that had more money than me. I know people that I've been around that grew up without what I had, but they still ended up earning more money than me. Do I assign privilege to them? Absolutely. The rapper 10,000. They tried this garbage in the 1960s. We can thank the Frankfurt School for all of that. They were very envious of capitalism. Of course, it's Marxism. It's an expansion on Marxism. Redhead privilege. Crazy chick Sheena. That's fantastic. Redhead privilege. What are you going to have? A straight hair privilege? Curly hair privilege? Blonde hair privilege? Pizza night privilege, and we had ham sandwiches? So that means you're disadvantaged, right? I'm sorry, this trivial garbage that's in our society, it has to go. It has to go. The same sword that they want to decapitate you with, they've already decapitated themselves. When they pick it up, it's already destroying them because their argument has already fallen apart. Because when they have to reflect on themselves, everything you're holding against everybody else is a part of who you are. You've destroyed yourself by picking up by weaponizing that one thing against somebody else. You've already destroyed yourself in that argument. And that's why they don't debate well. You notice if you watch a conservative get a challenge, issue a challenge on a debate or even a town hall, they're not going to debate. Because most of what they're going to bring is a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions and not a lot of facts, not a lot of policy, not a lot of historical context, historical perspective. They are not bringing any of that to the table. So they start shrugging and crossing their legs and bucking their eyes and sucking their teeth, and they just start. Then that's where it falls apart. Like, when is AOC going to debate anybody? Instead of getting on social media and making a drink and taking going down to the border and taking staged photos. It's pathetic. This is the incompetence the ignorance that we tolerate in our government. So I'm going to wrap that one up because I'd like to get on to this whole civil liberties tie here. All right, so here you go. I'm going to finish this one out because it's just going to be more excerpts. Of course, you've got a lot of people speaking out. Of course, now you have other people speaking out. Okay, according to NJ.com, the critics of the phrase "all lives matter" claim it, quote, dismisses white privilege and, quote, devalues Black lives, end quote. In an opinion piece from CNN, of all places, writer Paxton K. Baker claimed, responding to, quote, Black Lives Matter, quote, with, quote, all lives matter, end quote, quote, delegitimizes the movement, end quote. Well, how does it delegitimize it? If it's a solid argument, if it's a solid movement, then how can it be broken down so quickly? If it's a real argument and a real movement, and not just somebody's mental disorder that needs somebody needs affirmations to pad mental disorder, or if it's not based on anything, it can't withstand. You can't withstand, you cannot formulate an argument. As if you can't support it, then nobody really wants to hear from you. This is a contradicting whatever it is. Okay, of course, critics of Black Lives Matter movement argue that the term, quote, Black Lives Matter, end quote, has its own set of negative associations. The movement's connections to well-known Marxist organizations, its radical leftist, anti-white, anti-traditional family agenda. Yes, that's another thing. Destroying the nuclear family, which includes defunding police, wealth redistribution, and propensity for violence, have made it equally offensive to many people. Others critique the mantra as solely political, given the movement's failure to address black-on-black crime and black-on-white crime. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani took the, quote, Black Lives Matter, end quote, phrase to task as far as back as 2016 during an interview with Fox News following the shooting death of Dallas police officers. Giuliani opined the phrase, quote, Black Lives Matter, end quote, was inherently racist because it was divisive. Black Lives Matter never protest when every 14 hours someone in Chicago is killed. This is paraphrasing, probably 70 to 8% of the time by a Black person. Where are they then? Where are they when a young Black child is killed? End quote, he opined. And yet Walmart continues to sell merchandise with the phrase, quote, Black Lives Matter, end quote. It also sells a t-shirt that rebukes the, quote, all lives matter statement. It reads, quote, all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter, end quote. As observed by USA Today, this is just the latest in a series of actions taken by Walmart to prove it is woke, end quote. All right. So here again, this is just more about the culture of course, desecration of flags, Mississippi state flag, because it features the Confederate emblem. Typically, Walmart displays a local state flag in its U.S. stores. I mean, quote, we know the design of the Mississippi state flag is being discussed by various stakeholders, end quote. Walmart said in a statement to CNN Business. Quote, while the issue continues to be discussed, we've made the decision to remove the Mississippi state flag from display in its current form from our stores, end quote. And finally, from Breitbart, we have the Walmart president and CEO Doug McMillon announced in early June the company was working to, quote, create a more diverse and inclusive team at Walmart at every level. McMillon elaborated. We will first look to address racial inequity through the business initiatives. We will also extend and accelerate our impact on society through the new Center for Racial Equity. One of the center's primary responsibilities will be to direct the $100 million commitment to support philanthropic initiatives that complement Walmart initiatives to shape the 4 national systems we've identified above. Black Lives Matter. It is all our responsibility to embrace that fact in what we say and what we do. There's no way to live our lives if we don't, end quote, McMillon concluded. Now that's intense. If you don't submit to this affirmation state, this oxymoronic affirmation, there's no way to live your life. There's no way to live our values if we don't. And what values? What are our values? I'd love to ask Doug McMillon, what are our values? Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to Sleek Steaks Rule. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate you guys for coming in. She says, hi, I enjoy listening to your show. I really appreciate that. I've been listening for a few weeks now or more. Lang Sandy K, keep going. I appreciate that. And shout out to Sandy K. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Sleek Steak Rule. Thank you so much. And, oh, the Rapper 10,000 says, let us know your thoughts on the cringeworthy pandering from the NFL and other sports to play the Black national anthem before the American national anthem. I think that's ridiculous. I'm saying the national anthem will always be the national anthem, but is anybody, why are they pandering Why are they using the national anthem to pander to one group of people in this country? This country does not just consist of black and white people. The Black national anthem, that's an anthem that they rarely roll out. It's been rolled out during Black History Month. It's just, we can't have, everybody has to concede in order to, I think there's two different things going on here. There's two different power struggles going on here. Why would the Black national anthem, national anthem need to be played before the American national anthem? You know what? They're really walking a slippery slope here. If we are all equal, why is it not enough to be American? We do live in America. So then at some point, then the Asian Americans might want a national anthem, right? And then maybe the Native Americans, maybe they have something they'd like to perform. Why don't we just have everybody in the country, every denomination in the country, every group, every representation in the country? Why don't we just do that? Everybody come up with your own display before the NFL. I'm not a fan of the NFL myself, first and foremost. Most of my life, I understand. I know it's a pastime, an American favorite pastime, but that's not something that I set my suitcase down on. And I'm telling you, I'm tired of all this affirmative action crap they're trying to shove down everybody's throat. So the thing is, what I get from this, you can't, unless there's affirmative action, that's a diminution of Black people by promoting people not based on merit, but based on their skin color or based on what's between somebody's legs. What does that have to do with anything? Why is it not based on your competence, your credibility, your ethos? Why is it based on, what do these things mean? It's competitive to live in the United States. We've had many people to come to the United States and they couldn't handle it. And guess what they did? They left. You had immigrants to come here in the early years of the nation that they could not make it. And when they could not make it, they went back to Europe and they didn't come back here because of the capitalism. It's competitive. I don't ever want anybody to give me anything just because I'm Black. I don't ever want to don't ever like my show just because I'm a Black person presenting you with whatever, whether it's content, live streams, replays, whatever it is. Don't ever like my show. I ask you to do me that one dignity. Don't do that. You know, I'm not removed from the Black community because I am offering you an opinion. I'm offering you my assertions. But I would never tell anybody to put my race over. Don't put my race at the top of my application. Don't put my race at the top of my performance. If what I'm doing doesn't speak to you, whether it's a performance or whether it's presentation, if it doesn't speak to you, if it doesn't reach you in any way, go to the next channel. I want you to do that. And I want you to do that as soon as you can. You need to do that. Now, is racism, is segregation, and is there talk of it? There's discrimination. You can find that anywhere. But I think the minute you mentally take that off, the minute you get rid of that, that's a mentality. It's more mental than it reflects my capability. I'm going to do the best I can until I prove otherwise. I think if anybody that tells my nephew, well, he can't do something, that's something I'm absolutely adamant about. If you tell my nephew he can't do something because he's black, I have a problem with that. If you tell him that, you have a problem with me because I'm black too. I tell my sister, you need to make my nephew strong. You need to make him strong in every way. He needs to realize who he is, that he's more than what he sees in that mirror every day. And he needs to know that. And that includes that skin color that he's coded in. No matter if you're spiritual or religious or whatever, if you believe in God, then you don't believe God made a mistake. I think a lot of these people are telling that there's a huge mistake in this body, in this containment. I don't believe my being is a mistake. I don't believe that tribulation or trials or challenges are a mistake. I believe if he allows it, then it's on me. But don't tell kids what they can and cannot do. Because that would make my family, you would be a defector if you do that. If you say that to him. And I will tell you, a lot of people have been derailed. If they don't listen to themselves, if you don't deal with your self-preservation, people will pull you down. A lot of times when you ask people their opinions, they give you their fears. If that's your fear, then you deal with that. But don't put your fear on me. Don't tell me what I can't be. Don't tell me what I can't do. I'm going to try 1,000 times and I'm going to try 1,001 more. But it won't be because of because of an opinion you offered or because of something you haven't worked out within yourself. So I'm sorry to go on a rant there. You've got to love yourself. These people, I see sometimes even in biracial kids, they get to be conflicted because there's so much emphasis on race. And right now, instead of them loving themselves first and really demanding, establish your worth, establish your self-worth with your interactions with people. Shout out to the Lockhart Perspective. Thank you so much for coming in, the Lockhart Perspective. I really appreciate you for coming in. It's nice to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, if you're not familiar with the Lockhart Perspective, you definitely want to check out her channel. That's one of the channels that I absolutely admire. So thank you so much, the Lockhart Perspective, for coming in. And so, there I was in the middle of a rant there, because many people have heard many things. You're going to hear a lot of things growing up, and you're going to learn from all of them. But at some point, you have to keep. It's just like when you go to these universities, these the modern day indoctrination camps. You have to, at some point, you get all that discipline, right, from all those years, but then you get the freedom in music. We discipline ourselves playing scales and doing all these things, but then eventually all that discipline gives birth to freedom. After you get all that knowledge from all your family members and all your friends, you still have to decide what do you want to hold on to? What's reflected? What works for you? And then you're going to keep doing it. As my dad used to say, if you stay here on this earth, you learn something all the time. And he said, you stay here longer. And you think you learned something today, you keep living. Stay here longer, and you're going to learn some more things. It's one thing about my dad. He always said, and I think this was his way of saying, you have I'm not going to say this is a black or white thing, but my dad's, I've heard people say, oh, you're not too big to be beat. Well, I think my dad's way of saying that, well, I'm your dad, and I can always tell you something, and I'm gonna tell you something, whether you want to hear it or not. And I just think that's the way life is. It's gonna show you things, and you're not gonna control them. You're not gonna be in control of them all either. You cannot control people. You cannot. We like to think that we can. We like to think that we control the circumstances, but can we control people? I don't think so. So that's bringing me to my last installment on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming in. I appreciate it. But I just wanted to share this with you. I did a little bit of correspondence with Senator Feinstein on the HR 6666. Make sure I get all the sixes in there. I just want to share a little bit of that with you guys. Thanks so much for coming in. So I'm going to share it with you. I expressed to her that we're talking about civil liberties right now, and I do think that the fix is in. They are looking for another way to curtail our civil liberties. I really believe that, and you need to you keep that in mind. We've had our 9/11 before, so what do you think is going to happen? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to share my Senator Feinstein interactions, which, you know what, I'm not going to say I had a lot of expectations for her. I think she is she's an element that needs to retire. I think she has shown more than tainted and more than she needs to retire. She took a while to get back to me, but I'm no less grateful that she did take the time to respond. So I'm just going to plug this in really quickly here. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much for coming in. And you guys, of course, get to know each other. You have we have a lot of heavy hitters in here, a lot of heavy hitters. When I'm talking about content and we're talking about live streams. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is take this time right before I finish the final installment here to go ahead and shout out the patrons. I really appreciate you guys. And also keep in mind the community tab has the poll on it. We're going to do some training. We're going to have some training opportunities here on Black Spring with Autumn. And I would just love to know what you guys would think as I am putting together the training, putting together these opportunities. So if you don't mind taking a look on the community tab and, we're trying to come up with solutions here. We dissent here, we share ideas, we do all of these things, but we want our voices heard, and we want to be able to, we need a different type of, I think not only do we need reform in this government, we the people need a different role. We need a different involvement, we need to be more informed, and we need to be more active. I think that's what I submit. So let me move on to my correspondence with Senator Feinstein. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So I have video. I've just been a little bit in and out today. I will share as always in just a second. So I'm going to open up the letter. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys, so much for coming in. So, all right. So this is, I want to minimize the situation a little bit. Okay. So the letter here from Senator Feinstein, she says, thank you for contacting me regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. I appreciate hearing from you, and I welcome the opportunity to respond. So I'm going to blow this up for just a second here. I understand you oppose the, quote, COVID-19 testing, reaching, and contacting everyone Trace Act. That's the HR 6666, which was introduced by Bobby Rush, Democrat of Illinois, on May 1st, 2020. This legislation would fund contact tracing and other measures to respond to the pandemic. It is important to note that this bill would not supersede existing federal privacy requirements, including important provisions of the Health Insurance Portability and the Accountability Act, HIPAA, or the Public Health Service Act. H.R. 6666 is currently awaiting consideration by the House of Representatives, of which I am not a member. Okay, you're not a member, but you're still my representative. So with that said, I'll keep going, guys. Sorry about that. I strongly support implementing contact tracing programs to ensure that individuals who may have been exposed to the virus can quickly self-isolate. You may read my recommendations for the steps that must be taken prior to reopening the economy in a recent op-ed published in the Sacramento Bee here, which I did not read that because I just chose not to read it. Maybe later, but not now. However, like you, I believe the federal government must work to protect our privacy while fighting the pandemic. I strongly support the passage of federal privacy legislation to ensure that individuals can control their personal information. If you would like to read the set of core principles my Senate colleagues and I developed to serve as baseline for any comprehensive privacy legislation, I encourage you to visit the following website. Okay, there it is, sen.gov, I sincerely appreciate hearing your opposition to the Trace, quote, Trace Act, end quote, and I will keep your letter in mind as Congress considers additional measures to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Once again, thank you for writing. Should you have any questions or comments, please call Washington, D.C., or visit Feinstein.senate.gov. Of course, she's on social media. And of course, she has, if I want to sign up for her email newsletter, Best regards, Diane Feinstein. Okay. So there you go. So, but you know, I don't want, I don't think she understands that she can provide, she quickly took herself out of the direct involvement. Well, I'm not really a part of that committee, but I do support check out my op-ed. And the problem is that the government, people don't trust the government in these times, okay? With all the tension that's going on and with this pandemic or plandemic, some people call it plandemic, give me my tin hat wear, I'll wear it. That nobody trusts what's going on, because the end game we think is much more sinister. We think it's much more invasive, and we don't want to take those risks. Okay, I will tell you, I gave you guys lately a story in which that Apple as well as Android have already plugged in software on your actual devices, which will track, which is already, if it's on, it's going to start telling you who you've been in contact with. You know, they're also that's a job creator, another government, mass government. They've created these temporary jobs to track people. But do you guys realize, if you knew that you came into contact with somebody that had COVID-19, what would you do? Can you imagine how confrontational people would be? Oh, well, you just got in contact with me and you had COVID-19 and now you infected me. And can you imagine how many people will blow up on each other? How much violence that will cause? Well, and because who's going to be privy to that data? Who's going to be privy to the contact tracing data? And what are they doing with that data? I mean, we have a lot of threats of our Fourth Amendment rights going on. We've got, you know, I do believe that the ID, this biometric style ID, is something that they want to push. They want to say, okay, and in order to rejoin society, now get this ID right now, and your vaccination all rolled up into one. I still don't think that's off the table, ladies and gentlemen. I really don't. But they don't have the right to go through your things and to serve and create a surveillance state behind a pandemic with a 90% recovery rate, above 90% recovery rate. And that's the thing we don't hear. They go from death to testing. We're not hearing what we need to hear. Where are your recoveries? Where are the deaths? the actual deaths that occurred due to COVID-19, not because somebody had a car accident, not because somebody had a heart attack. Where is the data, the full data report? The thing about, they say, oh, we got cases, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have death. We have people that I know of that have had this thing and they've walked away from it. Why is that not being reported? Because they are looking, it's the civil liberties under attack. This is the perfect storm. You got a pandemic, you've got Black Lives Matter, you've got people confronting each other in the street, you've got race relations at an all-time horrible high. So of course, people pulling statues down, but in the meantime, that's what they're doing behind the scenes. Contact tracing. I don't want the government tracking me. They're trying to make you think that you are going to have some type of ultimate security. Give up some of your liberty so we can protect you. I mean, I would say for anybody that, I mean, I have a friend who's lost a father to this pandemic. And I know people that are living with it and that are walking away from it after their quarantine. But do I think they need to be tracking and tracing and canceling people? I do not believe this is going to be it's not going to serve for just for the purposes of the pandemic. It is not. I mean, who knows? I mean, many people say, well, you guys are saying now that they want to do all this ID and tracing, but they've been tracing us anyway. But now they just want to make it official and figure out a way to put more to violate civil liberties even more, all under the auspices of a pandemic. And then, of course, you've got all these other agendas. You've got these philanthropists, the Bill Gates, the Rockefellers. You got, I don't know if I want to throw Ted Turner in. You got all these people with a ton of money, and just George Soros. I mean, they're doing everything they can to undermine liberties, undermine this country. If this country goes down, your liberties are going down with it. Some people say, well, we're not that free. Well, we may not be, but at this point, we're going to go to more regulate. We're going to go to regulated privilege then. Second Amendment's under attack. First Amendment under attack. Your privacy under attack. There's a lot of legislation that is direct HIPAA violations. She threw all of that into that letter. She threw all of it. I mean, I had specific points that I brought up in my letter to her, but I appreciate that she did respond. Whether this is a template, this is a template that she sends out to people that don't support contact tracing. There's no way they can ensure anything. The government is not God. It's not my God. Government can't make everything all right. They just can't do it. Now, some people, they'll go for it, but not me. So at this time, I'm going to take a moment to step aside from my rant there. But there again, I do write to senators. I do write to representatives, because that's my right to do that. And that's a right that we all have. And I'm not saying that's going to be the most effective thing to do, but I certainly would think that it's going to be more, there's more, it's going to be more notable than me going out here pulling down a statue, which I don't support, or launching attacks on people. So I'm going to go through, just shout out everybody in this stream. I do appreciate you guys coming in for this 11th hour stream. Shout out to Garrett Reed. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you so much for what all you do. Shout out to Crazy Chick Sheena. Shout out to the Kiss of Hamrabi. I wonder if I'm saying that correctly. Hamrab or Hamrabi. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. Thank you so much for coming in. Known Sean for a long time. Shout out to Gary L. Youngkeist. Thank you so much. And shout out to Cold War Jesus. Thank you so much for your loyalty and for your support. I really appreciate that. Shout out to Crazy Chick Sheena. Thank you so much. And let's see. We have shout out to the Lockhart perspective. Without a doubt, I'm absolutely stunned to see you in my live stream, and I'm very happy that you came to my live stream. So thank you so much for coming in. Great content creator, ladies and gentlemen. Great content creator. Killer Whale Channels, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. A shout out to Echo Caldinia. Appreciate it. Thank you guys. The Rapper 10,000's always coming in with full of thoughts. I really appreciate it. Let's see, who else do we have? Yes, and Blaze TV is fantastic. There's something very fresh about Blaze TV. I think it's not only is it fresh about Blaze TV, I think that it's a nice compromise between. I put Blaze TV ahead of CNN and any of these mainstream people in a second. In fact, I think I need to join that channel. I thought I had done it, but I need to make sure that I'm subscribed. But I really enjoy the perspectives that they bring on, and the people seem to be very content. They're not. I just find that a lot of people are miserable these days. I find that. But look at, they're being taught to be miserable. They're being taught to be miserable. Touchdown Sean says, my sister had COVID-19 not too long ago, and she is fine. You're right. BLM and COVID-19 are being used for a larger agenda. Much, very much, Sean. Very astute. I think it is. Before you fly, you've got to do this. Before this, you've got to do that. It's just regulating civil liberties, canceling capitalists for not being a part of the affirmation campaign. That's exactly what I'm going to associate Black Lives Matter. It's the affirmation campaign. And they don't, but after reading some of their documents, I don't find that they have a core. They say that they're trained Marxists. Okay, so we'll make that your core. That's your landscape. Your core, you're a Marxist. You're on your way to communism. You've expanded you've got your little enclave of communism right there. Think reform. But if you read their affirmations, and which I did the other day, you will see that they're calling themselves Black Lives Matter, but they've also casted a net so wide that who are you trying to catch in all of this? I'm going to be honest. I think that there's more of an LGBTQ agenda. I think there's a stronger push. I'm wondering if this whole thing is going to morph into something else. Because I told you guys about the HR 5. That's another piece of legislation that I do not agree with. But there's a lot of affirmations about transgender. I think it's almost like they're declaring war on heterosexual people, declaring war on the nuclear family. I think everybody in America should have a look at these affirmations. Nobody is exempt. Nobody. The 2 founders, I mean, there's a Black Lives Matter curriculum. I mean, if it's not in your school, it might get to your school. I mean, they rolled it out in January. So I'm saying this is a lot deeper than just this is. I'm not even sure. I think that they knew that it was expedient for them to include the word Black on the front of this. But I think that there's a much larger, there's a different community, a different outcome that they're seeking here. It's because all of a sudden you're seeing more. You just had legislation approved for LGBTQ. You had, of course, Justice John Roberts. I mean, that was an appointee from George W. Bush. There's your neocon appointee right there. So I submit that we have serious infiltration. And unfortunately, we're going to get to the point of no return if we don't. I think we're close to it. I really do. So I just want to shout everybody out. Thank you guys so much for coming in. And if I do another stream, I will post it. Any of this weekend, I will post it much more in advance. But I thank you guys for coming in and hope you had a chance to hit that like, unlike, or if you dared to share, throwing caution to the wind on this July 4th weekend. We're going into it. So just advise everyone to be safe out there and to remain vigilant and to try to enjoy yourself where you can, and try to surround yourself with people that are, try to surround yourself with kindred spirits. But then when you're not, just remain vigilant. I mean, I'm doing a modest celebration, or a modest observance. Let's put it that way. It's going to be it's going to be a modest observance. Yikes. There's a lot of consonants in that. But yeah, but stay safe. Shout out to the Definition of Anarchy. Thank you so much for coming in. Once again, I hope you guys enjoy your holiday weekend. And I'm going to take one more opportunity to thank the loyal patrons. And then we will round out this segment. And I tell you one thing, I might even do, it's more likely that I might do a moonlight stream. And of course, you guys are all welcome to that. I used to do more moonlight streams, and I really appreciate you guys for coming out. So without further ado there, so just check out the following patrons: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, Angel Munez Variety Show, The Definition of Anarchy, Sandy K, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, and special thanks to Cold War Jesus. Thank you so much for your support. And please keep an eye out on that community tab. There is a poll there. I will be pulling that poll by the weekend, probably by Sunday night. I'll pull the poll, but if you'll take a look at it. And thank you guys so much. Thank you if you guys were coming into the stream for the first time. I really appreciate it. If you're listening in your car with the window down, or I would not dare suggest that if you're engaging in a safe way from your car, that's always welcome. I wouldn't imagine. I don't know. I have yet. I support other streams, but I haven't quite pulled over. My car to engage in somebody else's stream. But I think that's fine to do too. Shout out to the rapper 10,000, Old Head Deuce. Shout out to you. And shout out to Cold War Jesus, who says Tim is very strong mentally, and it comes from a highly integrated thought and understanding of his place in the world. I do think that Tim Scott has a lot to, I think he has a lot to offer. I just think that as much as this, they've done a job on people's thoughts. This thought reform has been absolutely toxic for this nation. It's been toxic for the next generation, and I think people would not vote for Tim Scott just because he's under the Republican flag. It's tough to say. It's tough for me to assert that, but I do think that you'll have a faction of people that simply won't support him just because they don't know the history of the two parties. They don't realize the people that the statues that they're yanking down are mostly Democrats. Pelosi was yanking down Confederate portraits. Why would she be doing that? Why would anybody, when you take down a picture, I mean, at some point, you take down a picture, and yeah, it's really deep. And I think, what do you have to hide? And then I saw somebody else's point of view. They want to be able to take credit. I do believe the liberals and the progressives, they, in this new paradigm, some people call it new world, whatever, they want to be able to take credit for the change, just like they did during the Civil Rights Act. They did that under Lyndon Baines Johnson, but the Democrats did not want blacks to have civil rights or the right to vote. Look it up. You don't have to take my word for it. 3 days. But they want to be able to do something slick when all of this new paradigm sets in, whether we fight tooth and nail against IDs and vaccination, vax IDs, they want to be able to take credit for populists, but they want to do it. They finally stopped talking about immigration, illegal immigrants, or they finally stopped talking about that, and now they're back on black people. Now black people they're back to using black people as stepping stones. You got to think, well, why would they be doing that? And if we're not careful, we're going to end up with one party rule. To me, them making 20 million or more illegal immigrants, and giving them the right to vote is going to be their new voter base. Yet they refuse to do any compromise on the DACA, which those kids are still under. They still have temporary status here, even if Justice Roberts did make or break that ruling. They still have what do you want to call it? That's still a temporary fix. It's a Band-Aid. It was done by Obama as an executive order. And I would imagine, I don't know the laws on executive orders, but I would imagine it could be overturned. But I don't think that's over. But then back when Trump was trying to build a wall, he put provisions in for DACA. But they said, oh, well, you're not giving them a path to citizenship. You're not giving them enough. But they got temporary, but they're still temporary. They have a temporary solution right now. They got it at the Supreme Court level, but it's still temporary. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out. It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn, and shout out to everybody that came out today. And once again, if you could hit that like or unlike button, and I will say that keep an eye out on the community tab, as well as I may do a Moonlight stream, or I'm possibly going to do a stream this weekend as well. And if there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and close out this stream. Hope you guys have a great holiday, whatever you do. If you're doing a modest celebration, or if you're going out, if you're headed over to Rushmore, I don't know. Is anybody headed to Rushmore? I'm just curious. Just curious. So we're going to be rounding out the stream. Shout out to Crazy Chick Sheena, the rapper 10,000. Shout out to Touchdown Sean, Old Head Deuce, Definition of Anarchy. Shout out to Cold War Jesus. Thank you so much for all that you do. Shout out to the Lockhart Perspective. I encourage you guys all get to know each other. Great content creators we have in here, some of the best. Gary L. Young Keys Jr., shout out to you. Shout out to Killer Real Channels, Patrick Jane Forums, Theology Forums. Shout out to Sleek Steaks Rule. All right, guys. I thank you guys for joining me on this segment. Well, yeah, I would say, if I say this, I'm going to say this in the most proactive way, you got to stay locked and loaded. You got to do that. I mean, you never know. You never know. I mean, I've gotten some notices that are a little bit concerning, but I'm not. It's not triggering. It's just, if you're prepared, then you're just prepared. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Take care and have a great holiday weekend wherever you are.